Welcome to InsideTheHive.tv podcast, the show that takes you into the world of bees. I'm Dr. Umberto Boncristiani. In this episode, I spoke with Mario Jakob, the former owner of D&J Apiary, who recently sold his company and comfortably retired at a younger age, proving that it's still possible to make a good living from honeybees. Mario was a board member of the American Beekeeping Federation, among many other accolades. In this conversation, we discussed the secrets to become a successful commercial beekeeper, his favorite business model, and the constant challenge faced by commercial beekeepers in the United States. And now, I introduce to you Mario Jakob. Hello, Mario. It's very good to have you here in the show. Welcome to the show. I'm trying to do this interview for a while, and we're finally making. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing good. Our schedules were quite busy, so yes, we finally got together.
I want to start this conversation, Mario. You know, the reason why I want to bring you here to the show for a long time is that I think you are a phenomenal example of commercial beekeeper, a successful commercial beekeeper that I used in my daily base as a template, as an example of how things should be done. I learned a lot when we worked together in the past, and I want to get a lot of things from these conversations, a little bit of, I want to introduce you to my audience. I want to take a little advice from you about what commercial beekeeper do on a daily basis, what are the challenges. And I want to start this conversation asking you a little bit about you and an overview about the D&J Apiary, which is the apiary that you build up very successfully.
Well, thank you. When I've been doing this basically since high school, and in high school, my grandfather and my stepdad, who are the D&J of D&J Apiaries, they were running about 300 hives, by hand. Had an old 78 Ford 1-ton with no AC, just an old truck. And we had a small honey house about the size of a garage. And everything, like I said, was done by hand. None of it was palletized or mechanized. And so believe it or not, when I came to them and I said, look, I want to do this for a living, we had to figure out, how to make that next step, because we were bigger than a backyard or sideliner, but we weren't quite commercial. So what I did is I went to work for the biggest guy that was in our county around this area. And at the time he was running, 6,000, 7,000 bees, somewhere in that ballpark. And, so I learned a tremendous amount in those 2 years. Working for them, I had to get my CDL, because now we're not driving small 1-tons. We're driving, big trucks. And, they're using bobcats for moving out in the field. They're using forklifts. Everything is palletized. Everything is very efficient. And I learned from that is one of the key things that I think, time management and not wasting trips and trying to get as much on. Obviously, as most beekeepers know, commercial guys, you're always trying to get that extra pallet or load or whatever on the truck to get down the road, because you don't want to come back and waste the time, fuel, and labor to get it. So it taught me how to set up bee yards. Very important. Different. There's a whole different aspect of if you're doing it by hand versus by a bobcat or by a loader of some sort, swinger, whatever. And it really helped me to figure these things out. Plus I was getting paid, to kind of learn. I took all that. Surprisingly though, 2 years after that, I actually went to work for another a commercial bee operation in town. And they were a little smaller, ran about 3,000 or so hives, but they did wax rendering. So they had a different aspect of their business. and I learned the wax industry, how to render wax, how foundation was made. And they ran bees completely different than my previous employer did. And I learned that you don't have to do it one way. So I picked up some of the things that I liked from both commercial, beekeepers, and I chose the best that worked for me. I'm not going to say that it's correct, but that's what I chose and I liked. It really helped me kind of see that there's not just more than one way to do this. You just got to figure out what you want to do and how you like it. So,
yeah, let me show you. We have some. Where is it? I have some slides here, so you can tell me a little bit about D&J Apiary. Here you go. This is the logo, right? D&J.
Yes, logo. Yeah. We came. Actually, my wife kind of helped design that logo. Because before that, there was really no hard logo, and she says we definitely have to brand ourselves. And as you can see, the D and the J came from Dave Westervelt and John Westervelt, and they registered the company back in '83 with the state, so it's been a corporation for a while. Me and my wife bought it completely out in 2005. I mean, obviously, after the 2 years plus 2 years, so a 4-year stint after, from high school, I went to work for D&J and ran it. I had stocks in it because I took my bees. I had bought a truck, and, we combined our resources and, built in, but then finally bought my grandfather completely out. And in 2011, which we'll talk about a little later, we started a retail business out there, and thank God my wife believed me, because we did it on a leap of faith. It was just out of the blue. I said, we're going to do this. And, the new facility opened in 15. So about 4 years later after this, I had no idea if it was going to work. So it was just a complete leap of faith.
Yeah, we're going to touch base a little bit more on the business model that you create, that you developed and tested. But just let me just show the rest of the pictures here, so we
Not
can
a problem. Yep.
go that direction. So here we go. This is John Westervelt, your grandfather, right?
Correct.
And
Hey, Westervelt,
yeah,
my dad, and
shout out to David, fantastic guy. Pleasure to call him a friend. So why Umatilla?
well, believe it or not, we can all kind of trace our roots back to two beekeepers. I found out when I did a little bit of research back into the even early 20s. I know they were there during the 40s, during the Second World War, because we had, let me go back. So we had Demuth and Art Bruce settled in Umatilla. And at the time, there was a small airstrip there, and Orange Grove. That was all that was there. But in town, we actually had say in the 80s, we had a Daydant facility, which you got your bee supplies from. You had Sue Bee, where you could sell your honey to, and they were bottling honey there. And you had Randall's Waxworks, which made, your foundation. Before the modern plastic foundation inserts, it was all natural beeswax. And on the bottom of that picture, you saw Henry and Frank Randall. That's the second person that I went to. They had Randall's Waxworks that we eventually bought out. And their son, Tony, and grandson, Scott, actually came and worked for me. He was actually my right hand for many years. And, like I said, the area there, now in Umatilla to this day, there are still 11 commercial beekeepers. But it's funny that we can kind of trace our roots back to two guys that settled that area and somehow, worked for these people and, broke off and started their own commercial bee company, and we can all kind of trace it back.
Yeah, that's what I like those stories, is that, there is this whole tradition, localized, things happen, people start to get together, and there's a whole history in the whole Florida, actually, A lot of commercial guys in different areas there have different stories. Very, very fascinating stories. Let's me move this forward. So this is Dayton Umatilla facility. So it's one of the foundations why you guys established yourself there, because you have that support, right?
Correct. I mean, you could buy your bee boxes, your frames, everything there. They actually at that time had their own wood mill there. They brought the wood in on rail cars, and they would mill their own wood in-house at that facility.
So this is the new facility.
New facility, yep. I don't think we had any pictures of the old ones, but I built it as we could afford, and originally we had 2 school portable buildings. The reason I got those, one, they were inexpensive, and secondly, they met code for the county, handicapped bathrooms and all the proper fire escape stuff that you had to have to pass code. So I brought those in, and, for 4 years we retailed out of them, and they worked. And we basically outgrew them. And we started, realizing really quickly that we needed more space. And so that building there, you can't see it. Well, you can kind of see it, but different roof line, it's been added on to about 3 times. And as I could afford, we expanded, and we kept growing and growing.
Right here?
Yep. Yeah, that's the office. The one in the back was the original warehouse. And then we added on to the warehouse, and then we added on the extra wing where the trailer is and the classroom now. See, we had originally, that's the classroom there, and there's just the loading area there. So that's classroom, that's the wing. So it was added on to, and that was the new showroom inside. So, we had our products that we were selling there. I don't know, keep sliding. I don't know if I have a picture of the classroom there or not. No, that's just right behind that wall where the windows is our classroom, where we actually teach bee classes and seminars, and it really worked out well for us.
People know about you now, your background. You built a very successful commercial beekeeping operation in Florida, basically from scratch, learning from the people that you trusted, and combining different styles of beekeeping to get your own. So let me ask you something. I want to take this conversation more to the business sides of the beekeeping, since I am in a consultant business now, and I also identified this. There are so many ways to do, and so many beekeepers that do things in a different ways, and I was able to see things that I like it, things that I don't like it, and combine styles that create my foundation to help other beekeepers to start testing different models and different styles. I think you did exactly the same. I want to ask you something, Mario. How was D&J? I know we covered this a little bit at the beginning, but how was the business model of D&J at the beginning? And how was the progression and the reasons why you moved to that direction in your business model? Do you get more honey? Do you get wax? What was the driving force of the operation along the years?
Well, when my grandfather and my dad ran it, it was solely honey production. They produced honey, put it in drums, sold it. That was it. And even when I started working for the Randalls and different things, I saw there was opportunity in pollination. They were doing pollination for blueberries and watermelons, so there was money to be made in that we never really touched on, I guess. So I'm like, okay, we can do this. And I saw from them also the wax. There's money to be made in wax. So when there was an opportunity later on, we bought them out and bought their facilities and their equipment out. And, right now we're still one of the only people in the Southeast. I still got people from Alabama, Georgia, and all over Florida that bring us their wax cappings. And, we render slum gum, we run their wax cappings on a commercial scale, not on a backyard scale. Everything that the equipment is set up for running 55-gallon drums of, cappings or slum gum. And there's money to be made in that because nobody else is doing it. We got into the queen business. Queen business was more a necessity. Necessity is the mother of all inventions. I mean, we couldn't get queens when we needed them. Everybody was wanting queens at the same time, and we couldn't get them. So, well, if I can't buy them, I'll make them. So we started, making our own queens. And I want to give a shout out really to the Mitska family down here in Florida, because the bee industry is a small industry, and sometimes, some of the trade secrets, people don't want to let all their secrets out, keep them close to their pocket. But I went over there and they showed me their operation. I actually went over there for about a week and helped to work side by side with them and learned. And not that they were afraid that I was going to take their business away. They were very open and nice to teach me the avenue of that side of the business and the bees that I didn't know. And so, I took that information, brought it back, trained up some guys, and, they were doing that aspect for me, but I basically had to know how to do that. I think that's one of the things too that I know we're going to talk about a little bit later, but as a successful businessman, you have to know every aspect of your business. You can't rely on somebody else. You need to know it. And then obviously we got into the retail part. That was kind of when we bought out the wax, everybody was bringing their wax to us to render in Umatilla and had been doing so for years. And they would then normally, as the wax was done, they would pick it up from, the Randalls and take it up to Dadant and buy their bee supplies or trade it in on bee supplies. Well, Dadant closed their facility in Umatilla, and they're one up in Georgia, and they moved to High Springs, Florida, which is halfway in between the two places, and put a new facility. Well, that meant that all the people from Umatilla had to drive up there, and all the people from Georgia had to drive down. Well, since we had so many commercial guys in town and other commercial guys bringing me stuff from all over, they said, hey, why don't you get some bee supplies and we'll just buy them from you and we don't have to make the drive. And so I did. Originally, I was geared totally towards the commercial aspect of it. I mean, I really did not even think about the backyard beekeeper. And quickly, about 6 months to a year into having the retail shop open, we quickly learned that, honestly, there's a huge market for backyard beekeepers. They are wanting the supplies, they're wanting knowledge more than anything, and that's how we started doing the classes. So, it was just, we had to learn to adapt.
Always improving, and do not be afraid of the opportunities that was on your face, right? You see the opportunities there, and were not afraid to change things and take advantage of the things that are happening around you.
Well, I mean, there's always, in business, you have to be willing to change. Business will never stay the same. It's always evolving. And you have to do that, I think, in any business. So we just had to adapt. And some of it we wanted to do, and some of it we were forced to do. With, say, the queens, we were forced to do it. Yeah. Because we couldn't get any. And then like the retail store, it's something that, hey, why not try this and just see where it goes? And it was scary for a little while. I'm not going to lie. My wife will tell you, for the first 6 months we were open, the phone didn't ring. Nobody kind of knew that where we were and who we were and that we had supplies for sale. Then as the word got out, it just grew rapidly. I mean, it snowballed. I never thought it would grow as fast as it did.
Yeah. But it's beautiful to see when something is working and you just ball rolling and make you feel better. And that you go into the right direction. And that's a good hook to a conversation that I want to have to you, Mario, is that I don't know if people know, but you retired as a young age, very successfully doing bees, and a lot of people are scared and sometimes don't even believe that it's possible. So you're in a very good position today, retired with the bees, and is still working in the industry as a consultant. And I want to pick your brain about the business side of bees, because something that is my mojo wherever I go. And you have this, I remember when we worked together, say, well, I'm useless here. Mario can take care of everything. He knows what's the main secret of any business and beekeeping is that test everything. Don't trust anybody. Don't trust any brand. Make sure everything is functioning, and you have that in your DNA. I would like to ask you, how was your approach about, making sure you're in the right direction in your business side and in the beekeeping side?
Well, you learn on the bee side. As far as the business side, numbers never lie, and I've always been a numbers guy. Never was good at spelling, but I was good at math. I was always a numbers guy, and at one point we had wrapped up the operation, and we were running close to 5,000 hives. Had seven full-time employees plus myself. I mean, I was running up and down the roads, hardly home with my family. And at the end of that year, I looked at the profit and loss, and looked at the actual data and the numbers, and I go, I'm spending all this time, but all the money that's coming in is going right back out. And the money's going back out, for labor and fuel and maintenance on the vehicles and just everything. And I learned then that it's not all about how much money, and I see this in a lot of businesses, not just the bee industry. I see it in restaurant businesses and stuff. People, what I call turning money. So yeah, that they're bringing money in, but it's going right back out. So you're not actually making a profit. You made 20,000 this month, but you got 19,500 in expenses going back out. So how much have you actually made? It's just turning money. And I learned that when we actually cut back on the number of bees and cut employees back, and my expense was less, my stress was less, and I actually kept more money in my pocket at the end of the year. And so I did that as far as, that was a big eye opener for me, because I always thought, everybody around was always how many bees you had. The bigger the number, the more successful you had to be. Oh my God, you're running 5,000. Oh, I'm running 8,000. Oh, I've got 10,000. And it just seemed like always these big numbers. And then I got to looking at it, it seemed like all you're doing is chasing your tail, so, and my wife was, my secretary, and I have her even, when we got more successful, every quarter, at least, for me, it was every month, I was running profit and loss. I wanted to know where the money was going, what money we had. Is there any way to cut expenses? Every month, no lie, we caught that the garbage company went up on our rates just because they wanted to go up on our rates. I caught it because, it was, like $20-$30, but I caught it. And we called them up, and I was like, hey, what's going on here? But if you're not paying attention to that, little things like that will slip through you. And then as far as testing stuff, on the bee side, we always tested, things. Especially with chemicals. I never trusted that the chemical was going to work. I hope it did, but I always took test hives, and we ran a test, and twice I can tell you it saved my operation. There was one time We used a chemical up in upstate New York. It worked great. Brought the bees back down. Wanted to treat for mites again. Didn't work in Florida. Too much humidity, we found out later on. But had I taken just the word that, oh, it works, I would have not known that it wouldn't. And there was another time that we actually treated the hives. And I went back and rechecked after the treatment. And come to find out, our mite load was actually higher and was growing higher. And I was like, guys, what's going on? Did you not treat this right? My first reaction was something that my guys did. I'm like, hey, guys, what happened here? And they're like, no, boss, we did it just like you said, And so I went out to the field. I went with them. I did it myself. Still, results were the same. It was not treating the mites. So we pivoted. I mean, literally from one day to the next, we switched everything, switched the chemicals that we're using, and retreated the whole operation, which was very costly. I mean, first I had bought the initial treatment that didn't work, so you got the cost of the chemical plus the labor and time to get it on the bees, and then having to pivot and do the same thing again, and having to play catch up because now we've got a higher mite load than we would normally have, and I mean we lost some bees and it was hard to catch up, but I saved the bees. So I think this industry, it's a small industry. And that's one thing I wanted to say too. I think is important that you have good connections. You need good connections. If something's not working, I'll pick up the phone. I've got connections with, the bee labs and say, hey, have you guys tested this? Is something not working? And also in the industry itself, you want to make sure that your name means something. And I hope that when I left this industry, I haven't completely left it, but, when I left it, I had done, 8 years as an ABF director. I'd made contacts and we had gone out to those meetings, and it wasn't so much for the meeting aspect of it, but you made connections. You got to know other beekeepers. And, I think for a new guy, if you're wanting to start out, I think that's huge. If I had a problem that's something that I didn't know about, was out of my wheelhouse, I had, a phone that had numerous contacts in it that I could call and at least get some kind of an idea or answer. And I think that's huge. I really do that, if you are in this business and you burn bridges, you're not going to last very long. You have to make sure that, you stay by your word. And I've made deals, trust me, that I've gotten burned on, and I honored them knowing that it was a bad deal because I gave my word. And sometimes I tell you that they didn't set well with me, but I did it because I said I would. And I think, those keeping your word, I think is important. And, I can still call, I still have the phone numbers and contacts. I still call some of my bee friends, not for bee advice anymore. I'm checking on them, see how they're doing, but it's important that if something does happen, that you can count on people that may know something that you don't know. And that's important. Always learning, always growing,
In any business, the secret to, is a stable environment to do business is trust. There are relationships and transfer of wealth between people. And if there is no trust on something that was agreed upon, it's always a recipe for a disaster for any economy. Mario, going back to the business model, I want to ask you, what was your sweet spot regarding number of bees, employees, and machines for you to generate the maximum profit with the minimum costs for the way you like to run your bees?
I'm going to say what I did, and I'm not saying this is the one and only. I found that for about every 500 to 700 hives, you needed an employee or a hired man. You needed some kind of extra hand to be efficient. I mean, you can do it yourself, but efficiency, you needed that kind of to labor, My sweet spot was about 2,400, say between 2,000 and 5,000. We hovered the bees right around 23 to 24, which, you're always going to have losses and gains because you're splitting and whatnot. So, we try to be there in that sweet spot. And as far as employees go, basically for that, I had 5 guys, which we call it back of the house and front of the house. So we had employees in the front that were, doing the retail side of things. And we had the back of the house, which was doing the bees and the queens and whatnot. So we had 5 full-time employees in the back, and I was kind of the floater, if you will. I was the, if they needed me up front, I would be up front. If somebody was sick that day or whatever, if they needed me in the back, I could do both jobs, I like being out in the field more, I can tell you that. The office work was not my favorite, but it had to be done. I'll be honest, I probably made more money sitting in that office making deals on the phone than I ever did, being behind the wheel of a truck or checking a beehive. But that's where my love was. I love being out in the field with the guys, and I trust my guys. I had good guys, really did. I think that's the other key thing is finding good help and keeping good help. And I will tell you, I honestly, and I'm very proud of these individuals. I really am. But I had 3 individuals that worked for me that broke off on their own. And now they have a commercial, successful bee business, now here close to Umatilla, very close to Umatilla. Matter of fact, one is in Umatilla, one's 2 towns away. And I'm proud of them. I mean, they'll tell you, they worked for me. They put in some time, some sweat, and they learned, and they were smart enough to say, hey, I can do this. And they went off on their own. And they started small, started with just getting a couple of 100 hives and got a truck and a bobcat and, started working that way, and then got to where they had their own honey house and bigger trucks and more bees and the same thing. And like I said, that's how we started. Most guys don't just jump out there and go, hey, I want to be a commercial beekeeper, not knowing. It's more or less, for what I'm seeing in the industry, is it's an apprenticeship program. Either you were born into it, your second, third generation,
yep,
or you went to work for somebody and you learned. And there's nothing wrong with that. And like I said, you really want to train up a guy and you want him to be self-sufficient. But the problem is, if he's smart enough, by the time you train him up and, get him where he can drive a bobcat and have a CDL and drive a big truck and know how to inspect bees, he's going to be just about right to leave you. And then you got to train somebody else up all together.
They swarm.
Yeah, they swarm on you. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So, but like I said, I didn't have any ill will towards those employees. I mean, we were actually, some of them, worked with us, say, hey, I've got a pollination contract that I can't cover right now for whatever reason. Can you cover it for me? Or, hey, I need an extra bee yard because I've got some splits. I don't have a place to set. Yeah, I've got an extra yard over here. And that's where that communication really is key in keeping those contacts with beekeepers, and just be honest with them. Say, hey, look, I'm only going to use it, or tell them, hey, you can only use this bee yard for 1 year, but I'll let you use it for a year. Don't try to steal my bee yard.
Yeah.
So,
Mario, when you're running in your full capacity, using your sweet spot that you remember and described here to us today, what was the model that you were following? What's the ratio? Was honey, pollination, queens? What was the model that you're using in your sweet spot?
Well, we had probably about a quarter of the income was pollination, And honestly, I would have never thought this was mostly California, though we do have some, we always had some blueberry and some watermelon contracts here in Florida. But honestly, when everybody was jumping on that bandwagon, I told them they were nuts. I said, there's no way I'm going to ship bees halfway across the country. You know, they're sitting on the back of a truck. If they're on team drivers, 2 teams, that truck never stops. It's still 3 days. If it's just a single driver, it's a minimum of 5 to 6 days that those bees are on the back of the truck from Florida to California. I mean, it's hard on bees. And I said, man, these guys are just crazy. There's no way I'm doing this. And then the money got to where, guess what? I looked into it, and it became a very big part of my annual income. So that's a one way of saying that even me was fighting it. I finally had to go with it because the money was just the numbers. Once again, I told you, numbers don't lie. And the numbers said that it was very profitable and it needed to be something that we did to be profitable. The rest of it probably was honey. And then I'd probably say a quarter was honey, a quarter was queens and nuke sales, which were directly then combined with our retails, because we would then have people that wanted to get in the bees and they would buy our nukes, and then, you know, a year later they needed to requeen or they're making splits and they would come back and buy queens from us. So it kind of gave us a growing, a growing, basically people that constantly just knew, hey, we can get queens and bees from D&J, and so it became a big part of our, our final financial plan, which really wasn't what we were planning to do. Originally, the queen operation was just to give me the queens I needed to keep my bees alive and requeen and make my splits. It was never intended really to go for selling queens. I never started the business for that. I did it just because I needed queens, and then it morphed into, all right, we'll sell some. And I never really got into the big. I let Mitska, he didn't like running small 1, 2, 5 queens, 10 queens. It was more of a headache for him. He liked shipping, 100, 200 queens out the door. So I didn't like dealing with that because I never knew exactly what I would have, because I was running a smaller queen operation than he was. We didn't have as many queen mating nuke boxes as he did. We were just running a ramp down or smaller scale operation. So I was okay, because I would have extra, say 40 or 50 queens in the bank. Well, a big guy, a commercial guy, he wants 100 at a time. Well, small guys, they only want 1 or 2. So I can sell, 40 to 40 people, and they were happy. And so what I did is I actually contacted Mitska and said, hey, I'll give you all the big guys. You send me all the small guys. And it was beneficial to both of us. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
It worked out for him, and it worked out for me. So when we got a call, hey, we want 100, I said, hey, call Mitska. He's probably better. He can probably help you out better than I can. And then if somebody went over to him and was like, hey, I just need 3. Like, yeah, go talk to Mario D&J. He can hook you up.
Yeah, collaboration. You need to find those win-win situations.
Yeah, and so it worked out.
Mario, talking about California a little bit, I remember you have concerns like you described, but while you're doing, you also have concern about the exposure of the bees there. How was your model there? You sell your hives there, or you bring it back? And how you mitigate the problem with exposure and pesticide exposures there?
We did sell some bees. Most of the years we brought them back, which is a huge expense because you're on the hook for the trucking out and back. So obviously if you use sell a load, you just pay trucking out, you get the pollination contract, and then somebody else buys the bees, and you get the sale of the bees, and you don't have to get the trucking back, which is the best way to do it, but it's not always, you can't always find a buyer for the bees. I was very much afraid of California. I hate to say it, it's a cesspool. It really is. You've got so many different bee operations from all over the United States, and you have no idea what kind of viruses or chemicals they got in their bees or their hives. And then, the hive dies and your bees goes, robs them out. And now, lo and behold, all of a sudden you've got that in your hive. And these loading yards they have out there, I mean, they're huge loading yards. I have, 20, 30 semi-loads of bees in there at one time. I hated when I had one semi-load sitting at my field. I mean, the drift that was happening there, and, bees, they would pick on the weak hives. It was terrible. So what I did to try to mitigate that or minimize the exposure was most of the United States sent their bees out early. They got them out there and guys would spread them out. So I got with beekeepers, and I always dealt with beekeepers. I didn't deal with brokers. I wanted to know the guy. I have been to his house. I have sat down at his table, had dinner with him. So I know where he's at. If something goes south, I at least know where he's at, not just a broker over the phone. And I would tell him, I said, look, every day you let my bees sit in Florida, they're growing. They're not going backwards. In the springtime here in Florida, bees are just exploding. So every day you give me here, I'm just giving you a better beehive for the broker or for the farmer. And so what we did is we were the last ones in. They would get all the other bees from wherever they were up north, and some of them out of those potato Quonset huts that they would overwinter bees. They would get those in there. And then the very last bees to hit right before the bloom opened would be, bees from Florida. And I'm not the only one that did this. There's a couple of commercial guys here that did this. And we all worked kind of together, too, because it was a mad dash at the last. I mean, you're trying to get everything done at the last minute, get them on the truck, get the trucks lined up, get them out there. There was one year, I remember, I-10 was froze. They couldn't get them in. They had to reroute the trucks. Always problems with California and their ag inspection. The bees, not clean. They need to go wash the bees or whatever. And once again, I had good truck drivers. I use the same group of guys year after year, and I don't ask questions, but they always got my bees where they needed to go, and it was worth every penny that they charged me. So I'm just going to leave it at that. But they got my bees where they needed to go.
Good.
But that was the arrangement we had worked out, and it worked. Once again, I was dealing with beekeepers direct. And it's important. I flew out there. As you know, I flew out there. I met guys. I wanted to see where my bees were at. I wanted to check the bees. When I was out there, I was, once again, making sure, those guys out there were spraying, not only pesticides, but we found out fungicides were really harmful to bees. Until we started realizing that, we're like, why are these bees coming back from California and then having huge losses? And we figured out it was partly because of fungicides that they're spraying. So once again, we went out there and figured this out and I think it's important that you go out there and meet not only whoever you're dealing with, but look at your bees and the grower, meet the grower if you can, shake the grower's hand, put a face there so he understands that, hey, I'm here to help you, but in the same token, you got to be here to help me. Can you minimize your spray efforts? Can you spray at nighttime? Can you do something to help me out? Can you wait till I get my bees out? Questions like that.
You always never assuming anything. That's something that you're always testing. You're always making sure whatever you think is happening in reality. And that's one of the main things that I see in the industry today. A lot of beekeepers with a lot of assumptions. And when I go there and test and talk with the crew, see with my eyes, and I bring the information back, said, sir, everything you said never happened. You need to believe me. In your mind, things are going to a direction that you think is right because of your experience, but the thing never happened. And sometimes sometimes they believe me, sometimes they don't. I'll leave it at.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you from my experience, I had a quick, I'll give you two quick analogies of that. We had a beekeeper here that I'm not going to name his name, but he got older and he trusted his workers to do all the work. And I had a bee yard, right down the road from him. So I went to him, and afterwards I said, Mike, I said, you need to go check your bees. He says, no, my guys got it. He says they're doing good. And I looked at him, I said, Mike, I said, you need to get in your truck and you need to go check your bees. He didn't. About a year and a half later, he was out of business. It's an unfortunate thing. I will tell you honestly, I trusted my guys, had great guys. But there would still be times during the week I'd send my guys out and I would get in my pickup truck and I would just show up. And they would be totally surprised. They'd be like, what are you doing here? I said, I'm working with you today. Well, why didn't you just jump in with us in the truck? I said, I just had a few extra hours, so I wanted to come out here and work with you. And they never knew when I would show up. I would just show up, and I would work with them right beside them, checking everything that they were doing. Not that I didn't trust them, but they never knew. Kept them honest. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
I think a lot of times people don't go back and check. And the other story that was funny, I sat in Horace Bell's office, and if anybody knows who Horace Bell is, he's a character. But he says, you know what, Mario? We ought to start a rumor. I said, what kind of rumor is that, Horace? He's like, we ought to invest in a chicken farm and then tell all the beekeepers that if you put chicken manure on the beehives, it'll cure the mites. We could be millionaires. And I laughed. And after I got out of there, I thought to myself, it's very true, because a lot of beekeepers don't test their own product, on their own bees. They just, Billy Bob down the road put it on and it worked for him, so it's got to work for me. How do you know it's working for you? I mean, unless you actually test, how do you know it's working for you? And I knew a lot of people in this industry that, there was a lot of hearsay. Hey, so-and-so's doing this, so-and-so's doing that. And I never got into that aspect of it. I just did what I did and tested and kept on going down the road.
It's been one of my main challenges, Mario, to try to convince people about the necessity of testing and make sure things are working before we complete your plan or move into different directions. It's really hard to change people's minds sometimes. I even say no to a couple of guys that I know is not going to do the work, and then it's going to hurt my reputation. I said, look, you take care of your own destiny. I'm just here to advise. But if you don't do the job, I can't help you.
And I think that was one reason why you and me got together and worked so well together, was the fact that we were both after the truth. We didn't care about anything else except what was the end result. And if it was good or bad, if it hurts my feelings, I don't care. I want to know the truth at the end of it. It's some people just want to hear the fairy tale ending. It may not be the fairy tale ending. I want to know what's really going to happen, what's going to work, what's not going to work. If there's a problem, how do I solve the problem? Keep moving forward. I think that's the biggest thing, just keep moving forward. And I think that's why I enjoyed working with you, and you are no BS guy. And I really appreciated that. So.
And I appreciate I remember, I'm laughing now. People at home to know why I'm laughing. When I met Mario first time, very straightforward. It was kind of fun, like conversations, and we just try to, find the truth from each other, and testing each other was a lot of fun until we start to, okay, this is a serious guy. This is legit. And then we got along so well and continued the relationship and the work for so many years. That was fun. So,
it was. I enjoyed it. Yes.
Well, Mario, this is very good information for everybody at home. So I have a last question for you before we wrap this up. Where do you see the business going? The future of commercial beekeeping here in America, and what's the biggest threat for the industry now?
Well, I think bees are always important. I mean, it's maybe the pollination is more important than the actual honey that they produce, but bees are so important to our agriculture and, the whole farming as a whole. I think there's always going to be, or there's going to be a need for bees in some aspect. So, you may not want to be the guy that does the pollination or the honey, but you may find raising queens is something that you'd like to do. Well, there's going to be commercial bee guys or pollinators that need queens to replace their queens. So, I think there's always going to be a need for every aspect of the commercial side of things, whether you're a queen breeder, whether you're a pollinator, whether you're a honey producer, um, even the supplies that come out, there's always going to be a need for, somebody to cut bee boxes and produce the equipment that is needed for this commercial enterprise. The challenges facing, I think, have been pretty much, the same in the industry would be, you have to keep your mites, your beetles, all these pests that we are now facing that we didn't have before, or maybe even new pests that are coming on the horizon that we don't know about. Keep them in check. Make sure your bees are healthy. The loss of land, I think, is one of the big things that is out there. Here in Florida especially, man, it's no lie. I can see it. They say they got 1,000 people a day move into this state, and I believe it because, the amount of, not houses, but apartments, these are apartments that they're putting up, is just crazy. I sold out less than 5 years ago, and right before I sold out in one of the spots, there was still an orange grove there, and I had bees there. And today, there is nothing but apartments in that spot, and that's in less than a span of 5 years. So, losing the habitat is a big issue, I think, for the honey producing side of things. Keeping up with, finding good help. A lot of guys are just, I hate to say it, they can't find good local help, so they're going to H2A workers, where they're going, getting help from other countries, Guatemala, Ecuador, Costa Rica, some of these guys, and these guys are here to work. They are very smart. They know bees from their country. You might have to train them on, how you want things done in your aspect, but these guys are here to work. They're not here to mess around. They want to work. And I can't say the same for, I hate to say, domestic workers. They're here to do their 9 to 5 and get their paycheck on Friday. And, I was lucky and had local guys that I could call literally, and I had at 3:00 in the morning and say, hey, we got an issue. We got to move a bee yard. Okay, boss, I'll be there, and didn't question things. They knew the time of the years where we were moving bees and getting bees ready for California. There was a lot of long, hours involved. Some of these guys would have, 70, 80 hours a week during those busy times, but they also knew during the slow times, they would be lean on make sure they get their paycheck. But, that was part of things that I think one of my biggest stress levels was, not only was I worried about my family, I had to provide for 8 other families.
Yeah.
I had to make sure that they had a Christmas, make sure that not only was this business supporting me, but I really took care. I really went out and made sure my guys were taken care of. We made sure that, after we got everything to California and we could breathe and we had a slow down period. Hey guys, let me take you out on a fishing trip. I'll pay. We'll have a good, company barbecue, invite the families in and have a barbecue and a fish fry or something. And really that boosted morale. That kept everybody, happy to work. And when the boss did call you at 3:00 in the morning, you answered that phone,
Yep.
I think that was important. Those are some of the things that I think that are really important that the industry is facing. I think part of it too is the one other challenge, I think, is you have to be a businessman. You can be as good as you can be as a beekeeper, but if you are lacking on the business side, you need to either learn that or find somebody that you can trust that can help you with that, a spouse that can run the numbers and the books. Because I see it so often. I see great beekeepers, but they're struggling. They're not growing. And I think the biggest problem is they're not, paying attention to the numbers.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem, I think, as far as some of the industry. I think that they honestly need to have more classes. They had some of those at the ABF, and I thought they were really well attended. People liked them. Is that bring in a professor that it's a business professor, teach more business things that, just because you're good at being a farmer might not mean that you're good as being a businessman. I think those were really, really well attended seminars at the ABF that they had. And I went to some of them myself. I learned things. I did. And I thought they were really, really important. So does that answer any, all your questions? Well, I'll be glad to answer some more. I enjoy talking to you. So, if you got anything, be glad to
I just thinking now when you mention all those things, and I just come to my mind. I think I agree with you 100% on that, and because it's my experience too. All the people that I help in my business, I'm not dealing more with the beekeeping issues. Most of the beekeepers there, they have a very good idea about beekeeping knowledge. What's been the problem most of the time is they cannot identify the business problems. How much where they're bleeding. They can't see. They don't know. They don't control the numbers. They don't have good books. And when you have the experience, you just step in the operation. You start to look around. You kind of know, right? You kind of know there is no way this is wrong. This is right. It's probably bleeding here, bleeding there, and one of the main things that I got is a problem with working with some guys that even to touch base, look, there is some subject they don't even want to talk about. It's just, and I just kind of how, This is hurting you and you don't want to fix it, and it's just so contradicting to me. And some people get even mad at me. So, sir, you call me here.
I remember the school. I mean, I had no lie. I sometimes it's hard to take criticism, but you have to take it. Like I said, good or bad, you have to be willing to accept it. And I agree with you 100%. The numbers don't lie, but I can tell you that one of the reasons why I was able to sell the business and get as much as I did is because the numbers didn't lie. Our profits, what we had as far as equity, we had it appraised, and the numbers even surprised me. It was because we had good books. We kept good books, and they were able to go and even have, a number of customers that we had on our computer from just, you could see how many repeat customers that were coming back to us. All these numbers are value. I mean, it's just, and I like numbers. They just don't lie. They tell you the truth. You might not want to listen to the truth or look at it, but it's there. I mean, and I think that's the biggest thing too, was just understanding that, like I said, I did profit and loss. And we always, back in October, every October, I would sit down with my tax guy, and we run a projection and kind of go, hey, and this is where we've been this year. What do you think? How is things looking? Yep. Okay. Or no, hey, we need to do some adjustments. But we did this back in October. We didn't wait till crunch time, because if I needed to make adjustments, I wanted to have the time to make adjustments. Those things were huge. And I could tell you some examples like, I know I need to buy 3-4 semi-loads of sugar to feed the bees. Do I buy that in December, or do I hold off and buy that in January? I'm still buying the same amount of sugar, but buying it December 31st or January 1st has huge tax implications. Those are types of conversations that you need to have, and you need to have a good CPA that can tell you, hey, this is going to hurt you or this is going to help you. Because whether or not I feed that sugar right now or it sits in my building until next year, it can sit there all at once. If it helps me keep money in my pocket, that's what matters. And that's, once again, you were saying about the sweet spot. It seemed like, it used to be that how many bees you had, that's kind of how big you were in the industry. I don't care if I was the smallest commercial guy there was. As long as I had more money in my pocket at the end of the day, that's all that matters. It's about what I retained as far as earnings.
And one thing that people misunderstand about commercial guys that I try to teach, but I think it's hard for people from outside to see it if they don't know it, is that because you depend on your bees, you care so much about them, they're the best good-looking bees I ever seen, People have this tendency to believe that, commercial guys are all about the money. That's true. They have a lot of, they're supposed to have money in their heads. There is no sin in making money. But at the same time, because they depend on the bees, they care so much and they find their ways to, there is no way to make money with bees with crappy bees. That's, they need healthy bees to make money. So if they don't have healthy bees, they don't have operation.
Remember I told you I went over to Mitzka's and he taught me about the queen operation? One of the best thing, the advice that I picked up from him was it sticks to me to this day. It tells you is that, they had, I don't remember exactly, 4 or 5 kids and they were all working in the bees at the time. And they've grown up now, but they were all working at the bees in time. And I looked at Dave. I said, man, you treat these bees almost better than you treat your kids. He's out there, he's caring for those bees. I mean, he does. He really, and he was always experimenting. Actually, it's where I picked up. He was always tweaking a recipe, trying this, putting bananas in a pollen patty because it's potassium. I would have never thought of that. He was innovating things like that. And his response to my question or my statement was, Mario, if I don't treat these bees better than my kids, I cannot feed my kids. It had always stuck with me. He had a point. These bees are your livelihood. And if you don't take care of them, you cannot take care of your family. And I mean, it was a powerful statement that he made, and it stuck with me. The one other statement that a beekeeper that I helped out when I was young, and he's passed away, but I wouldn't say he's a mentor, but he was a very important influence on me. He taught me about making sure the numbers. My grandfather taught me a lot about the numbers, but he was a real stickler for numbers. He told me one time, he says, Mario, if you take care of the small things, the big things will take care of themselves. And it took me a couple of years to understand what he was talking about, but he did, because he was always out there tinkering with the bobcat. He'd be out there in the mornings before anybody else and making sure the truck tires were aired up and everything was good to go for that day. And I was like, damn, man, you're always out here. Why are you always doing this stuff? But if you take care of the little things, then you don't have any big problems. Your bobcat won't break down. You won't have a blowout on the interstate when you load it down with honeybees. Those are some of the things that it took me a while to understand. But once I got it, I was like, oh, okay, I understand what you mean. Just make sure all those little things, the things that you can control, because there are a lot of things you can't control, but the things you can control, if you make sure that everything works, then you don't have a problem, So.
Yeah, I think you said it all, Mario. You said it all. Wow. So now you're very successful, retired, living in the Keys, enjoying life because of the bees. Here we go.
It can be done. I mean, there's some several guys that have done it too. There's a lot of guys that are looking to do it now. I mean, there's guys looking to get in the bee business and guys looking to get out of the bee business. And I
That's
think,
what I want to see more, so the industry growing to that direction, like in poultry and cows and, these big industries. And maybe I'm speaking for myself, because right now I don't have much space for what I do, as a consultant. But when the industry is bigger, like cows and poultry, you have several consultants working with a single organization, and right now, for my space, it's very small. I work with just a hand of people. I would love to see the industry growing to that direction to be more stable. I would say to stable, so it can stabilize everybody's life a little bit.
I would too. It's sad because, like I said, when I was on the board of the ABF, they did a lot of lobbying up in DC, and we were always the little guys. I mean, even though we produced a lot of, without us, we wouldn't have the pollination for even the cattle feed or the catfish or the pig feed, because all that is, alfalfa or clover that is pollinated, by the honeybees. And, or the almond. I mean, almonds are $1 billion industry, and yet we seem to be the little guy on the block and nobody takes us seriously. And it just, it's like here in Florida, I can tell you this much. I mean, when the orange industry had the huge problem with greening and canker, the state freed up, it was $2 billion overnight. I mean, they built a whole nother facility at UF, at the university, just to handle citrus, and yet here we fought for 6 years to get a bee lab. I mean, it was terrible to try to get any money from the state to help with the bee lab. It was mostly funded from the beekeepers. I'm proud to say that, I was one of the first to help with the funding and help promote it, because I just saw the value in it. We needed to have more research on things. Sometimes the research works a little slower than I'd like it to, but we still need the research. And it's important. I think bees are overlooked a lot of times, for these other big crops. And if they have a problem, oh my God, we got to fix that problem right away. But when the bees have a problem, it's, we'll get to it eventually, whatever, and it's sad. It is. But I think that's the reality of it, and I will say though, out of what's happened, with colony collapse and with COVID too, you've had a huge spike in people being interested in bees. And of course, the backyard beekeeper has evolved from this. I mean, I can tell you in the state of Florida, in the last 3 years, it has doubled. I don't know if you knew this when you were down here or since you left, but, when the numbers, because I knew some of the inspectors and were friends with them, there were about 3,000 registered beekeepers, just beekeepers in general in Florida. And I last checked, we're up to over 6. That's crazy. I mean, that's just, it's great for the industry. And the awareness of honeybees is huge. It's brought a huge awareness to honeybees. But once again, this is not 3,000 new commercial beekeepers. This is just 3,000 new backyard beekeepers, which they do have a voice. I mean, I'm glad that we've got an army behind us, because once again, these 3,000, new backyard beekeepers, they probably have 1 to maybe 5 hives in the backyard. Okay, just to say, let's just say they have 3 on the average. Okay, so you've got 9,000 new bees in the state of Florida. That's great. That's awesome. I'm happy about that. But that really could be just 2 commercial guys here.
Yep.
From the bee population. Do you see what I'm saying? But the thing is that with 2 commercial guys, if you have a vote on something in Tallahassee at our state or in DC, you've got only 2 commercial votes. Yeah. Hey, we want you to vote this way on whatever, political thing you're trying to do. But when you've got 3,000 people wanting to vote your way, now you've got, congressmen, senators that are starting to pay attention and start looking at this industry, I think, a little closer. So those are kind of my thoughts about that.
Wow. So it's growing. Yeah, the industry is always shifting and changing, and that's is scary but exciting at the same time. And it's about the beekeeper to also change and adapt the same way the bees does all the time in nature to survive.
I think that would be my final thought, is that anybody that's looking to do this, is you have to be open to change. I mean, like I said, I wasn't going to go to California. I went to California. You have to be willing to change with this industry, because it's ever changing. Business is constantly changing. The world is constantly changing. You have to be able to not be set in your ways. And I think that's where a lot of the old beekeepers, the ones that are not successful, they're stuck in their ways. They're stuck in a rut. This is the way my dad did it, and this is the way I'm going to do it, and that's it. Well, that might have worked for your dad, but the world's a different place now. I mean, like we talked about, there's a decline in just the land, just the habitat. So you might not be able to get as much honey production that your dad did, because the orange trees or clover or whatever you're trying to make honey off of doesn't exist anymore. They've planted something else in place of it.
Yep.
So you have to be able to adapt, to make sure that your business survives.
Yep. Well, you said it all, Mario. Any other message to people at home? If I don't know if you want to give them your contact information for consultant business, or you're gonna be overload. So I'll leave up to you. If you have anything to say, we can address now. Otherwise, I will finish this part.
We'll leave it for another time, and
right.
you might have me back on again, and we can discuss that. But like I said, I've got quite a few clients now, and I help them out, and I can say that their apiaries are very successful. And I'm happy with what I do. I get to pass on my knowledge, but I don't have the stress of running a business now, So I really enjoy being back in the bees. I really, really, it's in my blood. Really enjoy it, but I don't have all the headaches that came with running a business.
Yeah. That being said, I wanna announce here that there is some conversations happening between myself and Mario regarding a online structured course, so we can use our education here to teach people about bees and commercial beekeeping, more specialized in commercial beekeeping and transitions. So we are starting some conversations. So I hope we're gonna go somewhere. Let's see. So that's exciting to have these conversations, Mario.
Well, thank you for having me on. I do appreciate it.